Hello, my name is Tiago, and I am the co-founder of PodSqueeze.
And I'm Xavier. I'm the founder of PodSqueeze. I am a podcast marketer and content strategist.
And this is
Podcast Support.
Anna. I selected 10 of the most asked questions in the world of podcasting, and you'll be helping us answering this.
Let's go.
First question. If someone is starting their very first podcast today, what should they focus on before recording episode 1?
Well, number one, I think that it's really important that they know why they're doing it. So if you don't know why you're doing the show, how can you expect listeners to know why they should listen? So I think having a clear why is very important.
Second question. What's the most common mistake new podcasters make in their first episodes?
Expecting that they're going to be famous once they hit record. So there's this misconception that you just start a show and there you go, like you're famous just overnight success. And that's not the case. It takes a lot of work, or it takes a lot of strategic partnerships to grow.
What basic setup is actually needed to start a podcast today without overcomplicating things?
I love this question because people tend to overcomplicate what podcasting can look like. And so for me is the phone you carry on your pocket has a great microphone. And so everyone has headphones. And so most devices today are built to actually reduce just the background noise. So start with your phone, start with a tool that is really simple and works with your brain versus the trendy tool that everyone is talking about.
Awesome. And here I can also say that there are some tech that is quite good. So for instance, with PodSqueeze, we have our audio enhancer, which you can try it out at audioenhancer.com. And I'm amazed with the results. You can record things with background noise, with echo, just using your phone, and passing through an algorithm like the audio enhancer will make the quality almost studio-like.
Yeah, and quality is really important because if people cannot tell what you're saying, they will not stay, right? If it's not a good listening experience and if the content isn't interesting, no one is going to stay. So it's really key that you look at the basics, and audio is very important.
Yeah, I think audio is probably more important than the video part. What do you think?
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
And one thing, these little microphones that we're using, by the way, the DJI Mini 2 or Set Mini 2, they are awesome. They are super cheap. I think this set of 2 microphones plus the receiver costed like $100. Mm-hmm. And you can easily interview. It already has like a noise reducer. So if people are, of course, they can start with their phone, but if they are willing to spend $100, something like this is quite good.
Yeah, and again, your phone. It has a microphone built in if you're just literally trying to get started.
Should podcasters start with audio only, video, or both, and why?
Depends why you're starting a podcast, but I would say the must is start with an audio because you want people to be able to carry your show however they go, but make sure that you do have the show available on YouTube, even if it's on an audio only format, because we need to think about being available where people are and kind of thinking about listening habits. So if someone really loves listening to podcasts on YouTube, even if they just have a TV running on the background, there are people who love running and they really want their podcast to be, on Spotify. You can't listen to a podcast on YouTube unless you have the paid version. So it's really important that you make sure that, given that YouTube is the biggest search platform in terms of like multimedia content, they are owned by Google. Mm-hmm. So that tells us something. And so it's really important that your content is at least there. I would say for video, it just, again, goes back to why you want to do it, because incorporating video as someone who has a video podcast, it just increases the time for everything. Setup, editing, uploading, distribution, all the things, storage. So it's really important that you ask yourself, what is the MVP of this and how can I start? And then you can always incorporate video later on.
It's so much easier to edit something when you only have audio. Yeah. With my recent show where I have video, the rendering, everything, like just moving things around with multiple gigs, it's a pain. Yeah. So if you want to keep it simple, I think audio, it's perfectly fine. Now with YouTube, you can actually connect your podcast directly, so your RSS feed directly to YouTube. And once you publish using any hosting provider, YouTube will pick it up and post it automatically, which is quite nice. And another thing that I like to do, sometimes if you don't want to have the full video, but you can still record yourself and then use a tool like PodSqueeze to create clips and use these clips to bring people to your audio show.
Yeah, exactly. Just looking at the analytics is something I talk about all the time. Where are people coming from? Just make sure that you're trying and experimenting and having fun. But again, just because you don't have video yet, it doesn't mean that you cannot be on a platform like YouTube and build a following there.
Totally. How important is choosing a clear niche when launching a podcast?
I think you have to know exactly who should listen to the show and why. And having a clear niche, sometimes you can have a couple of different types of people, but understanding what is the listener's motivation behind listening to me is more important than having like that one person that you speak to. What are the qualities of this person listening? How are they all connected? Are they people who have specific qualities? Do they have specific hobbies? Understanding who you're speaking to will help you understand the length of the show, exactly the complexity at which you can create content, right? So if you're a beginner, level, medium, intermediate, whatever, and also what type of guests can you have? I think that is very important, because otherwise you're just always asking yourself, should I talk about this? Should I talk about that? It's just that clarity in the pre-production stage is way, way more important than just, recording and then, I'm doing a show for everybody. You're not.
Do you have a specific example of maybe one of your clients, or so that people can really visualize what you're saying?
Sure. We can talk about my show, for instance. So I work with primarily impact-driven entrepreneurs, primarily female, underrepresented communities, and leaders who are multilingual. And so when I'm talking about some examples, I know that mindset is a big thing. So I always make sure that I incorporate wordings around, like, I know that, maybe doing a solo show, it's going to be really hard for a lot of people, like women. Taking space is something really hard. And so I know that at some point I need to be more encouraging when I'm recording the episode and say, I know it will be hard, but you can do this. And so that really creates a more intimate relationship with the listener, because they're like, oh, she really is seeing exactly where I'm feeling called out, or I feel like I really needed that additional comment to feel like I'm like, oh my gosh, I was wondering about that. So it is truly the difference between I don't know what to say and almost predicting your listener's mindset and viewpoint.
Next question. How can podcasters realistically increase their number of downloads?
Realistically.
That's the tough one.
Well, I think that what I love about the job that I do is that I show people that you can do it in different ways. And so there's two ways to look at this. Either look at what's already working, what is already getting some traction, and keep doing that, more of that, instead of trying to do everything, or collaborate with other people. So try to tap into other people's audiences. It is way easier to convert a podcast listener from another podcast than, for instance, someone who is a social media user or someone who's a newsletter subscriber, because they're going to be having an interest already in podcasting. So I think just tapping into different audiences and then looking at what's already working. So I think that is the easiest way to grow downloads.
Do you mean getting interviewed by other podcasters in the same space, or interviewing people that already have an audience in that space?
Both, and even another one, which is to run podcast swaps, ad swaps. So basically maybe recording a quick intro on your show, recommending someone else's podcast, and then they do the same for you, or play a segment of someone else's podcast on your show and say, hey, especially if you make it very personal, say, hey, my friend so-and-so just recorded a podcast episode about this thing. I think that you will love it because, and then you tell them why they should listen. And this is such a great way to get recommendations in a very organic way, especially if it's you, the host. So I definitely think it's a good one to try.
That's a great tip. A follow-up question here. How do you choose a good guest?
Well, depends what your goal is. So if you're trying reach...
To get downloads,
just to get downloads, I would look at people who previously have shown that they actually engage and share content in which they've been guests on, because a lot of people will have celebrities or people who are just guesting a lot, and that does not translate in downloads because that person is so frequently on podcasts that they don't really care for sharing. So I would look at that person's presence, their website, their social media, their newsletters, and see, is there a track record of them sharing interviews they were guests on, and that's how, or maybe if you're trying to get some clout from people in the industry and that person is really well regarded, there's a big search volume volume for in terms of like that person's name, I would look for maybe that strategy, even if they themselves do not share a lot of stuff, but they're well regarded and well spoken, and those are Google searches that you can easily make. Those are two different ways.
How has podcast SEO changed, and what still works today?
So much has changed. I think that to me, how I always think about SEO is what are exactly the terms of the things that my listeners are searching for. And to find out things like this is to actually have conversations with our listeners. So understanding exactly how they describe those situations, those problems, those pain points, and then translate those into podcast episodes. And I think that for me, I always recommend having a website, because YouTube, podcast platforms, everything like social media, those are rented. That's rented space. You do not own any of those platforms. Yeah. So if you own your website, you have a way to track. And so I would always think about it from that standpoint. Now we have, SEO from the standpoint of video that shows up on Google searches. You have, AI now. But I think that at the end of the day, the hardcore, article that is really, or blog that is very helpful, that is rich in descriptive text, like what are we looking at really? It's to optimize for machines, but help humans click. So right. I think that to me, that's how I describe SEO. Is just like humans can find it because the machine found it, but right. humans are the ones that are going to make that decision to click. So it has to resonate with them.
Mm-hmm. And here I also have a few tips. So the first one is using tools like the Google Keyword Research, and there are many other tools that will show you keywords and how many people are searching for them. So I think that's a great way to, if you are planning some next episodes, and then you can plan around the search. Another thing is, if you interview the guest that has a lot of people searching for him or her, you can convert that into a blog post. You can use PodSqueeze for that, for instance, and publishing that on your website will be great, because then people will search for it and they'll see that there is an interview attached to it and listen to your show.
Yeah, it's always thinking about, again, giving people multiple avenues for them to engage with the content. Maybe someone wants to read, they can't listen, or maybe they'd rather watch. And so thinking through how can we, if we created that content once, why not allow for listeners who have different paths to find the content?
Mm-hmm. We also developed a little tool within the PodSqueeze space where you can just find your episodes, and then we'll use this Google Analytics to optimize the title and the show notes, so that we suggest some keywords for you to introduce in your title that we think might work well on Google. So that's a little snippet that could be interesting. Next question is, and this is a special one, how can podcasters make money from their podcasts, especially in the early stages?
If they have a business attached to it, I would say that if you have a guest who could become a client, is to be strategic about the guests you have. Right? Maybe the decision makers, the gatekeepers that are making those decisions about who to hire, I would have them right away. I had clients who secured over $10,000 just within the same week of starting the podcast. They did not release it. They just in the recording phases, because again, that interview was the way in. So it takes time to build, unless you already come with a pre-built audience, it takes time for someone to trust you and to give you money. No one's going to give you money just for the sake of it. But if you have a business attached to it, one, the ROI is going to be higher, and second, you have the opportunities to really showcase your expertise, build connections, and build your network with people who are going to be super instrumental in your journey.
What about sponsorships?
I think that sponsorships, actually I have Sponsor Magnet, a guy called Justin Moore. He wrote that book. I highly recommend to all my clients. He's he was an agency owner for a long time. He managed creators and the brands. And so basically I will say that there's actually a big need for creators, and podcast included, in that realm, but not enough people have. On that book, it explains exactly what you need to do. But a lot of people are stuck in, I don't have enough downloads. Blah, blah, blah. Like there's 3 things that brands look for, which will be in the book. And so it's not always downloads. Sometimes it's brand association. Maybe they just need a body to execute the footage that they need to use, right? They need your likeness. Maybe it's the trust that you have with your audience. And so it's not always, there's multiple phases in the journey of the buyer. So sometimes they don't need your podcast to do much. They just physically physically need someone to do the work. And so thinking about what can you offer a brand and put yourself in their shoes. I would say it does take time to build it, but hey, that's always an option as well. As if you have a skill to sell, you can contact a brand.
Right. What about the Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, these kind of platforms? Do they work?
I would say that it does take a lot of work for it to work, but you need to have a clear direction on why should anyone give you money. I'm sorry, it's not just because you exist, you're wonderful, I'm sure, but like, why should your audience give you money? I think that can work, but it does include a lot. I had a client that actually she would have $50 in recurring donations. So that was great. And then we did a donation drive because her podcast was all about nonprofits. And we did a donation drive. And so we pushed for donations and she got about $500.
Wow.
So again, you need to commit to promote it, but podcasters really struggle with asking for money. So have a clear action, but just try it, $5 a month, but what is the value that the listener is going to get out of it?
And I think that once you get a following and people that listen to you literally every week for 30, 60 minutes, they are surprisingly willing to contribute. Of course, not a big amount, but $5 per month, even $10 per month, some of them would be willing to do that. And you don't need, if you have, let's say 100 people listening to you, and if they're paying $5 per month, that's already $500. So it's a good amount, right?
Yeah. I think the churn is a big problem, right? So you need to make sure that you're telling them why they should listen. And a great way to appeal is to appeal to the emotion and say, hey, did you know that the production and all the costs associated with this podcast rely on me? If you could support this podcast, it would mean the world. It just means that I can continue to produce this content independently, yada, yada. Like, so tell them like how it is behind the scenes, right? And so what will their money get? Maybe it's creating an experience in the back end and say, hey, I release exclusive content, or you get a live stream with me, or you get the additional questions that no one else listens, or actually this was really interesting, I heard it in a podcast conference, they said you get to be the first to see the content live. Right, so to get that exclusivity of like I heard it first, and so that works. And I never thought about it as being like a tier, but people do buy it.
The preferential treatment.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
The super fans. How can podcasters keep consistent and avoid burning out?
Well, many different things are suggested normally, but my preferred method is understanding why you're doing it and what's the timeline of you achieving this goal they have, right? And so I think that a lot of people want to achieve all the things right away, and having that understanding of like, what is a sustainable path for you, right? And so when I mean this is, okay, maybe you look around and you say, my goal is to create content consistently. So maybe creating once a week. If I have other commitments or if my business is really busy, I can't commit to it, but maybe once a month. And so staying true to that sustainable creation is more important than just saying like, oh, I have to show up every single week because. And so that drives a lot of burnout because people forget that at some point it stops being fun and exciting. And I say a podcast starts becoming more like a commute than an actual enjoyable ride, like a stroll that you take. And so those responsibilities of having to release content weekly or whatever, like allow yourself to play, allow yourself to say, actually, this format does not work for me anymore. Or even though all the gurus say, oh, you should release weekly, if it doesn't work for you, then don't do it. But then on the reverse of that is, I think that is that format not working? Is maybe 40 minutes instead, like create something that is like 10 minutes long. Maybe it can't be interviews all the time. Or maybe you need to change tools and stop doing it all yourself and utilize some tools to save you time. Like for instance, for me, writing show notes is the bane of my existence. So I use AI for that. But other than that, I think like being realistic about like, what can you do well and consistently?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. One big focus for us, and really the reason why we created PodSqueeze, is because I have my own podcast and there was so much time spent on show notes, on repurposing for social media. And one of the focus at PodSqueeze is to really help podcasters there and keep them consistent by saving them hours of time with all that text assets and video assets and all of that. Last question. If you were starting a podcast from zero today with the goal of building a sustainable business, what would your strategy be?
I started my podcast on video, and even though there's a lot more work, My goal was, if I want to build a sustainable business that gets more visibility than everyone else, I would figure out what is no one else doing. And does that match a capacity that I have to execute that on a high level and stick to it? And so when I started in 2023, I looked around and I was like, there's no other women doing video, single shot and everything, but kind of like no one else is doing this. A lot of women are struggling to show up on video, so I need to do that. So I would invite everyone to look at what is no one else doing in your industry. And even if you're not doing it to the standard that you would like, just committing to it consistently, everyone will remember you from 2 years. Oh my God, like that person has I wonder if they still have a podcast. And you will be amazed. Again, looking at numbers, only 0.5% people actually reach episode 100. And so it's a sovereign status. Yeah. So when you look around and you realize like staying in the game literally is a win. So I would say figure out what is your unique angle and just staying on it.
Awesome.
Stay the course.
And tell us about your business, how you are helping podcasters, and where can people find you?
Awesome. Thank you. So I am a multilingual podcast strategist. So I help entrepreneurs and leaders who are really wanting to create a better impact in the world through their content or their business, truly create podcasts that become tools for their business, that they get the leverage that they're looking for. They get to connect and network with the people that they wanting. And so create impact that goes beyond creating noise. So leaving a lasting legacy. And so I love helping people figure out what to say and how to market the podcast so that they can grow. And so you can visit thepodcastspace.com. I do have a podcast called The Podcast Space, which you can access at thepodcastspace.com/podcast. So easy. And you can connect with me at on Instagram. I'm at The Podcast Space. I love showing different ways to promote your podcast over there. So just give me a follow.
Awesome. The links will be in the notes of this video. And if you like this type of content, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like, and write any comments or questions in the video below. And I will also read them. And maybe we can do part 2. Thank you. This was Podcast Support.